You ever find yourself just scrolling through your feed and you get this weird feeling that you're losing your grip on what's even real anymore? Yeah. One minute you see a headline, the next you're tumbling down some rabbit hole of conflicting facts, and honestly, by the end of it all, you're not even sure who or what to trust. Let me tell you, you are not imagining it. We are, right now, living through a massive, systemic breakdown in how we know what we know. So today we're going to deconstruct this whole epistemological crisis and figure out exactly why our digital world feels so completely and utterly broke.
But before we really get into the thick of it, if you could just take a quick moment to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, give this explainer a like, and maybe drop a comment to support the channel, it would be a huge help. Your engagement really does make it possible for us to do more of these deep dives.
You know, this quote just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures that feeling of instability, right? That sense that the very ground of shared facts we all used to stand on is basically just crumbling right beneath our feet. And look, this isn't some abstract academic problem we're talking about. This is a crisis that directly impacts our politics, our communities, our relationships, heck, even our own sense of self. So to really understand how we got here, we're going to need a map.
And here it is. This is our 5-part journey for today. We're going to kick things off by defining what this crisis actually is. Then, we'll dissect the digital machine that's driving it all. After that, we're going to look in the mirror at our own mental vulnerabilities, explore the powerful forces that are trying to shape our reality, and, most importantly, we'll finish up by finding some real practical ways to reclaim our agency in this chaotic new landscape.
All right, let's dive into part 1. The epistemic crisis defined. Because before we can even think about solving this thing, we first have to get on the same page about what the problem actually is.
So it all starts with this one kind of fancy word, epistemology. Now, don't let the term scare you off. All it really means is the study of a very simple question. How do we know what we know? You can think of it like the operating system for your brain. It's the underlying code that determines what you accept as true and what you just dismiss as false. And the problem is, right now, that entire operating system is crashing on a global scale.
So, what broke our shared reality? Well, it was really 3 huge seismic shifts. First, the sheer amount of information we're exposed to. It went from being like a river to a full-blown, overwhelming tsunami of data. Second, the traditional authorities who used to be the gatekeepers, editors, academics, scientific institutions, well, their walls just crumbled. The experts completely lost their monopoly on what counted as truth. And third, into that massive vacuum rushed a flood of disinformation, which gets supercharged by personalized filter bubbles that are literally dissolving our ability to agree on even the most basic facts.
And that is exactly why we use the word crisis. This isn't just about a few fake news articles or getting into arguments online. We're talking about a fundamental, systemic breakdown in the entire life cycle of knowledge. The very machine our society built to produce, check, and share reliable information is sputtering and failing. And when that machine breaks down, the social trust that's built on top of it, well, it turns to dust.
Now, a huge piece of this breakdown is something called the filter bubble. It's that comfy, cozy, personalized little reality that algorithms build just for you online. It's designed to be a comfortable echo chamber, feeding you more and more of what you already like and agree with. And in doing so, it very effectively shields you from any challenging or opposing views, the very things that might actually help you learn and grow. This slide really lays out the whole structural shift perfectly. We used to have a linear, top-down system. Think of it like a kind of assembly line, where big institutions controlled the flow of vetted facts. But we've moved to today's chaotic, circular free-for-all. Now, everyone is a creator, a publisher, and a consumer all at the same time. And that absolutely crucial stabilizing step of verification, that often just gets thrown right out the window. Okay, part 2, the digital knowledge machine. Now that we've seen the big picture, let's pop the hood and take a look at the engine itself. We're going to see exactly how this machine fails, step by painful step.
You see, for a piece of information to actually become a belief in your head, it usually has to go on a 4-step journey: generation, verification, distribution, and then finally appropriation. That last one is when we really internalize it and make it a part of our worldview. So let's see how our digital world has managed to break every single stage of this process.
First up, generation. Today, literally anyone can create and publish information. This has led to something called epistemic inflation, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Think about it like a government that just keeps printing endless amounts of money. The more you print, the less each individual dollar is actually worth. It's the same with information. The infinite flood of new content just completely devalues painstakingly researched, verified knowledge. The truth becomes just one option among millions.
Next, verification. And this is where things completely fall apart. The early utopian dream of the internet was that the wisdom of the crowds would somehow magically fact-check itself into a beautiful consensus. Well, that dream is officially dead. We now know from tons of research that lies, especially the shocking emotional ones, travel on a rocket ship, reaching thousands of people before a boring little correction can even finish tying its shoes.
This total breakdown in verification leads us to a pretty terrifying conclusion, and this quote just nails it. We have outsourced our sense of what is true, our epistemic authority, to the cold, amoral logic of virality. In this system, it doesn't matter one bit if something is factual, nuanced, or good for society. The only thing that matters is, does it trend?
And finally, we get to appropriation. This is the last step, where information stops being just external data and actually becomes part of us. But online, stating what you believe is often less about a deep personal conviction and more about, well, a performance. It's a way to signal which tribe you belong to. And when our beliefs get fused to our social identity like that, changing your mind isn't just admitting you were wrong anymore, it feels like you're betraying your entire team.
Okay, part 3, the mind's vulnerabilities. So we've seen the broken information system outside of us. Now it's time to turn inward and look at the flawed processing system inside our own heads, which is, of course, the final gateway for every single thing we encounter.
The core problem here is really an evolutionary mismatch. Our brains are basically ancient hardware trying to run futuristic software. They evolved over millions of years to process slow, local information that was relevant for survival in a small tribe. They were never ever designed to handle the instantaneous, global, 24/7 high-speed data fire hose of the modern internet. And to cope with this complete overload, our brains use mental shortcuts, and those shortcuts are now being systematically exploited.
These cognitive biases, they're like the biggest bugs in our brain's programming, and they are being weaponized against us. Take confirmation bias, for instance. Our natural tendency to look for info that confirms what we already think. Well, that gets supercharged by algorithmic filter bubbles that make sure we rarely see anything else. Or the availability heuristic. That's why a single, vivid, emotional video of some rare event feels more true and more common than a mountain of boring statistical data that says the exact opposite. And social proof. That convinces us that if a post has thousands of likes and shares, it must be true, right? Regardless of where it came from. These aren't moral failings on our part. They are just predictable features of human psychology.
And all of this feeds into what experts call the affective economy. Forget money. The real currency of the modern internet is emotion. As this slide says, boring, nuanced truth simply cannot compete in a marketplace where outrage, fear, and validation generate all the engagement and therefore all the profit. The entire system is precision engineered to reward whatever makes you feel something, not what makes you think.
So that brings us to part 4, the political economy of truth. Who actually benefits from all this chaos and emotional turmoil? Well, to answer that, we have to do what they always say, follow the money and the power.
When you boil it all down, this is a crisis of authority. The old gatekeepers of knowledge, they're in ruins. They've lost public trust for a whole host of reasons. But the new gatekeepers are the proprietary algorithms of just a handful of massive tech companies, and they're complete and total black boxes. We have no idea why they amplify one voice and suppress another, and it's in that dark, unaccountable vacuum of trust that some really malicious actors can thrive.
And that vacuum is being actively exploited. The goal of these actors isn't just to spread a few lies. No, it's bigger than that. The real point of a deepfake isn't to trick you just once. It's to make you doubt every single thing you see with your own eyes from now on. The point of a bot network is to manufacture a fake consensus, making some fringe idea look way more popular than it actually is. You see, the ultimate prize here isn't to make you believe their lie, it's to make you so cynical, so exhausted, and so confused that you just give up on the very idea of truth altogether.
And this reveals a really profound shift in how power and control work in the 21st century. Old-school authoritarians, they controlled people by hiding the truth, right? Through censorship. But the new method is far more insidious. You just drown the truth. You don't need to burn any books when you can just flood the zone with so much noise, so much conspiracy, so much distraction, and so much garbage that finding the actual truth becomes practically impossible for the average person.
The political result of all this is what people are calling a post-truth society. It's a world where political arguments and public conversations are specifically designed to appeal to feelings, to identity, to grievances, not to empirical facts. And in a world like that, language itself changes. Its main function shifts away from communication and becomes a tool for pure manipulation, a way to signal which side you're on.
Now, I know this all sounds incredibly bleak. I really get it. But we are not helpless in this. And that brings us to our final, and I think most important section. Part 5, Reclaiming Cognitive Agency. Let's talk about how we can actually fight back.
Okay, here is your toolkit for mental self-defense in the digital age. It all starts with something called metacognition, which is just the simple act of thinking about your own thinking. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Is this an emotional reaction, or is it a reasoned conclusion? Next, and this is maybe the most powerful tool we have, embrace the pause. In a world of instant reaction, the most radical thing you can do is just wait. Wait before you form an opinion, and especially before you share. And finally, you have to consciously diversify your information diet. Actively seek out smart, good faith arguments from people you disagree with. It is the only reliable way to break yourself out of that bubble.
But look, individual actions alone are not enough to fix a systemic problem. We also need much broader change. We have to demand real algorithmic transparency from these platforms. We need our education systems to prioritize epistemic literacy, teaching students how to think, not just what to think. And on a personal level, this requires all of us to cultivate a bit of cognitive humility, the simple, honest admission that we could be wrong. Because in this interconnected digital age, the simple act of trying to know things honestly and seeking out the truth, it's no longer just a private, intellectual hobby. It has become a profound moral act and a fundamental civic duty.
And this really brings us to our final big question. In a world that's just awash in simulation, where information itself has become a battlefield, truth is no longer the default state. It's not something we can just passively receive anymore. So is the pursuit of truth now a conscious, deliberate, and maybe even difficult choice that each and every one of us has to actively make every single day?
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.